Eric's story is a wonderful encapsulation of what Nobody Module 6 is all about, because it talks about how the body stores trauma, how the body remembers. So I met Eric 8 weeks ago in my practice, and I remember the first session was a very powerful session. The moment where Eric really connected the dots and brought to light a very heartfelt and deep story about his past, where we finally realized that really his body has been his vehicle of emotion, and finally he was able to understand how that was being manifested in his physicality. So today, Eric has been generous and kind enough to welcome me in his home to provide us a very candid interview about this story and how he finally came to realize that his body has always been a very important partner in his life, and how he suddenly became aware and discovered what it really had to say. We're in the home of Mr. Eric Hudson, a client of mine and also a psychotherapist, who's been kind enough to welcome us into his home to share his story around this very special topic. Hello, Eric.
Hey, Corey. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you and to share with you. I was up at our farm, was doing some hard work using a brush cutter, and about a day or two later, I started to experience incredible pain in my right shoulder and up into my neck. After a day or two, David said, "Why don't you make an appointment and go and see Corey?" So that sounds like a really good idea. Honestly, I have to say I was blown away by what I experienced that day. I thought that you would tell me something about some nerve damage to my shoulder, something that I'd done that had damaged something. And the session started with you looking at my body. Like, I had a pair of shorts on, standing in front of the mirror, and you began to observe. You observed a kind of something happening on the right-hand side of my body. Mm-hmm. You observed a gap between my right arm and the right side of my body there wasn't the same gap on the left-hand side of my body. And strangely, you noticed that my right nipple was lower than my left nipple, and I laughed when I looked at that in the mirror. Mm-hmm. You looked at my feet, as I remember it, and you commented about my toes. The toes on the right side of my foot, my right foot were curled, and the toes on the outside of my left foot were straight. It's kind of like weird. I thought it was weird. We're talking about my shoulder, but you're looking at other parts of my body. Yeah. And you began to ask me about what had happened to the right side of my body. And I immediately went to a physical trauma that I had on the right side of my body when I was 12, and it was a cycling accident where I ended up riding through a barbed wire fence and lacerating my leg, 36 stitches. So you were immediately interested in what had happened to the nerves in my right body. Mm-hmm. And then as our conversation progressed, I needed to tell you about emotional trauma as well. Same age, around the same time, a little bit after the bike accident, a longer term period of sexual assault against me by a neighbour started. And the thing that I told you that day was that the first place that he touched my body was on my right leg, on the inside my right thigh. I found it extraordinary. I think, what I knew, I knew that you'd hit on something that was significant in the way that I have since held my body in I kind of think an alert phase. So I've been amazed really at what I call fitting the last piece of the puzzle together about my childhood trauma and the way it upset me, honestly. It upset me that I was discovering again another impact of the crimes that were committed against my body as a child.
I think the body always remembers.
It was an extraordinary moment of awareness for me, and something that I knew in that moment instinctively that we were on target. I knew. I can just think of countless situations where I know what my body does to protect myself, to stay alert, to be attuned to risk. It is my body remembering that trauma, and the way that, because it wasn't a one-off event, it was an event. They were events that carried on over at least a 12-month period with different kinds of experiences in that, and my main body reaction really was to freeze, because it started in his abuse against me started in a lounge room in front of my brothers, but hidden from my brothers, and I was so frightened, and it just didn't have a clue what was happening to me, but my body was responding, and my body was frozen. I was immobilized.
Yeah.
Other times he would pick me up out of the room where he was babysitting. He would pick me up and take me to the bathroom, and on those occasions when I was away from my brothers, and I lost that kind of sense of freeze, and I fought. I didn't scream or yell or protest verbally, but I protested with my body. I fought against him, but I was 12, little kid, really scrawny little kid, and he was a 21, 22-year-old farmer from the farm next door, and he was strong, and he always overpowered me.
What's coming?
I just still feel that that sense of defeat in my body, and even in a recent session that we had together, where I felt as though the whole of my body from my waist down was frozen, was immobilized, and you gave me some strategies to move my legs that helped me to break that frozen pattern. I've worked on this stuff a lot over the last. I was 35 before I told anybody about any of this. So over the last 35 years, I've worked on this a lot, and it's a relief to have this piece of the puzzle fitting together. And you've given me the insight that my body can be the vehicle into creating some emotional change for myself. So I can't tell you how often each day I notice what my body's doing.
We often get caught up in the way we think, which then steals us from the way we feel. And being able to bring that feeling and associating that with our thinking can be, as you say, the last piece of the puzzle in our process of change. To be able to witness that in you was an honor to see that. You're starting to notice some of your ways of thinking are also reflected by the posture you hold within that situation.
The first step for me is just simply tuning into my body, simply being aware of what my body's doing. I just did it then. I noticed that my shoulders were a bit up and a bit tight, so I just like, okay.
I'll let you notice that.
Yeah. Can I just talk about the most recent session we had together?
Please share that.
That you noticed some. I'm not sure what words you'd use to describe it, but you were working with the kind of the muscle testing in both of
Yeah.
my legs, and
Yeah.
you'd noticed a kind of a change, and
Yeah.
you took me into the room and put me into got me to take a couple of different positions,
Yes.
and simply gave me time to listen to what my body was telling me. That was really, really powerful to tune in and to trust what was coming up from my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The body participates in our problems.
The thing that's been really emphasised is that my body carries its own wisdom.
It does.
If I can take time to tune into it and listen to it.
That's ultimately the major lesson, and I appreciate your openness and generosity and transparency in sharing this beautiful story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.